You know, the whole promise of blockchain is built on decentralization, right? This idea that no single person is in charge. But what happens if that promise gets broken? Today, we're diving into one of the biggest security threats in the crypto world, the 51% attack. It's a kind of takeover that could literally rewrite financial history.
I mean, just think about that for a second. Imagine someone could just reach into the past and change a financial record, make a transaction disappear like it never even happened. And look, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. It's the very real threat of a 51% attack. And it hits right at the core of what's supposed to make blockchains so trustworthy.
So, what is it really? Well, a 51% attack is what happens when one person or one group gets their hands on more than half of a blockchain's total hashing power. That's all the computational muscle that keeps the network secure. The moment that happens, doom! The whole idea of decentralization just shatters.
And with that kind of power, the attacker basically becomes the king of the blockchain. They can stop new transactions from going through, they can halt payments, and, this is the most terrifying part, they can pull off a double spend. That means spending the exact same digital coins more than once. They're not just bending the rules of the system anymore, they are completely breaking them.
Okay, so this sounds super complex, right? But the strategy behind it can actually be broken down into a few key steps. So let's walk through the anatomy of how an attacker could actually pull this off.
What's pretty wild is just how methodical this whole process is. So first, the attacker has to get all that hashing power, right? More than half. Then, and this is the sneaky part, they secretly go off on their own and start mining a private version of the blockchain. Because they have more power, their secret chain of blocks grows way faster and gets longer than the public one. And then, for the final move, they unleash their longer chain onto the network. The rule in blockchain is that the longest chain is the true one. So just like that, the honest chain gets kicked to the curb. Its history totally erased.
The mechanics are one thing, but the real-world damage? That's a whole other story. When an attack like this actually succeeds, the fallout can be absolutely catastrophic for the network, and really, for everyone who uses it.
A successful attack pretty much opens a Pandora's box of problems. The one everyone fears most is double spending, because it just fundamentally breaks the currency. But they can also launch what are called denial-of-service attacks, which can freeze the entire network. They can reverse or block totally legitimate transactions, and maybe worst of all, they can cause this severe, long-lasting damage to the blockchain's reputation and the trust people have in it.
And that really gets to the heart of the danger. Yeah, the immediate financial loss is bad, for sure, but the real damage is this crisis of confidence it creates. Once trust in the ledger's gone, the entire ecosystem can just fall apart.
And we have to be crystal clear here. This is not some hypothetical what-if problem. It's incredibly difficult to pull off, for sure, but 51% attacks have happened, and the results were devastating.
Just look at this number, $18 million. That's the real tangible cost of just one of these attacks succeeding.
So where's that number from? Well, back in May of 2018, the Bitcoin Gold network was hit with a 51% attack. The attackers managed to double spend coins worth $18 million. It was a massive blow that just shattered the coin's reputation and its value.
So if these attacks are so destructive, you're probably wondering, why don't we see them happening to giants like Bitcoin every day? And the answer really comes down to one thing. It would be astronomically expensive and incredibly risky to even try.
The defense really comes down to two huge hurdles. First, you've got the hardware. To control over half the hash power of a network like Bitcoin, you need millions and millions of dollars worth of high-end mining rigs. Second, and this might be even crazier, is the energy cost. The amount of electricity you'd need, it's just astronomical.
So how astronomical are we talking? Well, the Bitcoin network is estimated to use around 95.58 terawatt-hours of energy every year.
To put that number into perspective for you, that's about the same amount of energy used by the entire country of Finland. An entire country. An attacker would need to control more than half of that. The scale is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And you know, it's not even just about the money. The timing of an attack has to be absolutely perfect. If you fail, you lose every single penny you invested. And beyond that, even if you pull it off, technically, there's no guarantee the community will just accept your corrupted chain. They could just agree to ignore it, which would make your whole expensive attack completely worthless.
But here's the crucial twist. This massive billion-dollar defense system, it doesn't protect every single blockchain. There's a hidden vulnerability here, And it all comes down to the huge difference between the big, established networks and the smaller ones just starting out. This slide really shows that divide perfectly. For a huge blockchain like Bitcoin, the hashing power is so immense that the cost makes an attack basically impossible. But for smaller blockchains, the total hashing power is much, much lower, and that makes them far more vulnerable targets.
And here's the real kicker. An attacker doesn't even need to buy all that expensive hardware. There are actual services out there where you can just rent massive amounts of mining power for a few hours. For a smaller network, this just completely changes the game. It lowers the barrier to entry from a billion-dollar problem to a very real and much, much cheaper threat.
And that leaves us with this big looming question for the future, doesn't it? As the crypto world just explodes with thousands of new, smaller chains, all with different levels of security, are we actually building a more secure, decentralized world? Or are we just accidentally creating more and more targets? It's a tension that sits right at the very heart of where blockchain is headed.